Go, 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 Indy, go, Indy, go, Indy, go, Indy, go, go. Yay! Hi, everybody. So, Atlanta season 4. It's come, it's gone, and it's over. The show is officially over. But there's one thing that's really stayed on my mind from that season finale, and I think of it, and I'm kind of starting to think that this might be one of the greatest speeches, not only on the show Atlanta, but it might be one of the greatest speeches of all time, and that is Demarcus. For them to do that on the last episode, to give a character that hadn't been seen before, heard of, or anything mentioned, to give him that much time, like he got 5 minutes of dialogue in that entire episode. So he took up a good amount, because I think the episode was only like 30 minutes. So he took up a nice little chunk of the episode, and they gave him the ability they gave him that dialogue. And it was surprising that they did that again, but it worked. Like, it really worked for them to do that. And so Demarcus was the black sushi man. And I feel like he dropped a lot of truth bombs in that, just in regards to culture, the way that we look at culture, the way that we do things, the way that we see things. And the way that I kind of saw this and a lot of what he talked about is the right message from the wrong messenger. Kind of looking at people like really two main examples are Charlestonwhite and Dr. Umar. A lot of times they deliver the right messages, but people look at them as the wrong messengers. But it could also be Donald Glover. Donald Glover has spoken before about kind of what's going on in Black America, and he had This Is America, and a lot of people felt a certain way about him. Even Dr. Umar felt a way about him trying to deliver that message because of his significant other. And so the kind of I saw a lot of Demarcus. Well, I saw a lot of Donald Glover in Demarcus. So is Demarcus Donald Glover's response to people like Dr. Umar? Is Demarcus kind of Donald Glover looking at himself and the way in which he wants to deliver messages and how he felt people responded to a lot of the messages that were delivered in Atlanta? I would even look at, especially that season 3, a lot of those anthology episodes, the way in which he delivered messages, those. I wonder if Demarcus is a kind of like a response to how people saw those messages and heard those messages. I thought the way he opened the speech talking about Queen and Slim and how there's a movie theater not too far from there, and that the night of his opening was the same night that Queen and Slim opened. So he said that black people were hopped up on black nationalism. So they came down there, they were like, oh, a black sushi restaurant. And then 15 minutes later, they were gone. So kind of what I saw from it and what I got is the way in which things will unite black people, but these same things are not able to hold them together. So we'll be united for a cause for a specific amount of time, and then it's like once that cause is over, we'll kind of wait, and it has to be brought up again for us to be united again. And this isn't a knock on black people, because I think a lot of people use that to tear black people down. But that's the same I feel like with everybody. It's just that the way in which the systems are in place, they have the ability to do that. So they can unite for just a millisecond and then go about their separate ways, and they still have things in place to, no matter what, they'll be okay. We, on the other hand, oftentimes we don't have those systems available to us. So when we unite and we take advantage of that, it's good for that moment. But then when we go back apart, things just fall apart. And and so it's the other thing that I really think about is kind of the sushi restaurant being a metaphor for black people stepping outside of their lanes, because sushi isn't something that black people typically do. Sushi isn't something that, for a while, it was something that black people didn't eat. But then there was like an explosion of sushi. There was, in Atlanta especially, it was like after a certain point, it was like kind of like that was like the thing to do. And then when rappers started mentioning it, it really became a thing to do because there was Roussan's was a big deal. There's that sushi restaurant. I want to say it was either on Ponce or adjacent to Ponce. I can't remember the name for some reason, but it was like this big sushi restaurant, a nice sushi restaurant. But sushi like legit became the go-to thing to do. Another thing I thought was really, really interesting is the message that he delivered about, and I tie this into a message of black ownership. He talked about Popeyes. Some of the wording might have been wrong messenger, right message, because he was coming from a place of envy. But him mentioning the fact that if you look at Popeyes, the forward-facing person, the person that they put in the front of Popeyes, is that lady. But then you question, how much ownership does she have in the company of Popeyes? Because Demarcus mentions that Popeyes restaurant is owned by an Italian family. And then the other interesting thing that he mentioned was that an Italian family that did not marry black. And so what I think of this is I think of when it comes to black equity in relationships. And I wonder if this is, again, Donald kind of looking at himself, because Donald is not married to a black woman. He doesn't date black women, or he hasn't dated black women for quite some time. So the equity of his relationship is not going to go. It's not going to go fully black. I can't knock Donald for his relationships, but I question that. So Demarcus is looking at ownership of something, profiting off of a culture, but then not putting back into that culture. And I think that's why he mentioned that line. That's at least what I heard. So you may have heard something different, but that's what I heard. And then to kind of keep on the Popeyes things, there is a line, and he says that, again, going back to ownership, he says that this is our culture being salted and battered and then sold back to us. And I think you can kind of look at that in a lot of different ways, because you can look at that in the way in which, they promote TV to us. We're being sold these cultures. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with telling these stories, but we're being sold slave stories. We're being sold drug dealer stories. We're being sold hood stories. We're being sold the single woman who has a triumph. All these other stories that are kind of battered and they're sold back to us. And again, I can't knock those stories. Those stories are important. And even if you look at Atlanta, the way in which the relationship between Van and Earn, and not only that, but the relationship between Earn and Paperboy, that was a culture being sold back to us, and that part of the culture had been battered to a certain degree. So maybe this is Donald kind of knocking himself a little bit and knocking Atlanta a little bit. But I thought that was really interesting. And then so again, more interesting parts, and why I think this might be one of the greatest speeches of all time, is throughout this entire conversation, it's lingering on Demarcus trying to get Paperboy to try poisonous blowfish, while Paperboy wants to go over and eat some Popeyes. And so my understanding is that with blowfish, you have to cook it a certain way, because if you don't cook it a certain way, it is poisonous. But if you cook it the right way, it's not. So he's trying to get Paperboy to try this blowfish, but Paperboy is more intrigued by going to get Popeyes. And so the question becomes, which one is the poison? Is the poisonous fish the poison, or is Popeyes the poison? And I'll eat Popeyes from time to time. I admit it. But the question becomes, which one is the poisonous? And why do you lean towards one versus the other? What causes that? So it's kind of like a black person would rather go to something that, again, maybe they don't know 100% about it, but if it's done correctly, it's not poisonous, versus something that they know well, they're used to it, they see it all the time, it's efficient, it's easy for them, but it is poisonous. It's not good for you. But hey, that's just part of the culture. And there was a lot of stuff in this speech, and maybe this, I just kind of want to start off. I did want to do this. I had some notes. I was going to write some stuff off, but I wanted to talk about this because I think, and I don't think I see enough people talking about that particular moment in the season finale, because I thought it was really important. And again, going back to it, another part is he talks about the regional lack of distrust. And this could be this could tie into the fact that, the fact of how black nationalism is only oftentimes a very small thing. Is he talks about how you say, you know, you don't trust a person from this side, or you don't trust a person from this state, or you don't trust a person who comes from here, because that happens a lot. Like, you hear stories about these Chicago dudes who moved down here and now they're causing issues, instead of saying, hey, let's talk to these Chicago guys and see what's going on to figure out how we can come together. Because people are going to move. There's going to be great migrations. There's going to be more great migrations probably coming up in the next few years, in which people are moving from states to state. So what we have to figure out as Black people is, how do we come together? How do we not have the mentality where I can only trust myself or people who are from my specific state, or I can only hold people accountable from my specific state for doing certain things? So how do we kind of get outside of that? But yeah, that was real quick. I might do a part 2. I want to hear other people's thoughts on that speech and just kind of what they think about it, because I really do think there was a lot of truth bombs that were dropped in that. And me personally, I think it's one of the greatest speeches. And I've gone back to listen to that several times. Like, I probably heard that speech maybe like 10 times since that season finale, and I'll probably hear it again. But yeah, if anybody wants to start a discussion, have a deeper discussion, continue the discussion on this, feel free to, you know, send me a message. Let me know. And again, I continue to appreciate the views and everything. Hope you guys continue to watch, and hope you guys continue to appreciate my content. And see you.